Gavin Newsom and the Democrats in California love free speech until they don't. I don't even want to say that this is a ban on hate speech. This is a ban on unfavorable speech.
I'm fighting to make sure that this state that I love does not turn into the country I left. That's what's happening with this bill. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Steve Hilton Show. It is bill time in California. All the insane legislation that the Sacramento insiders have passed, and it's now heading to Gavin Newsom's desk for signature. So we got a lot of updates on these many terrible things lurking in the woodwork. And we've got Denise Aguilar and Tara Thornton, fantastic fighters for parents' rights and medical freedom, here to give us an update. They've won some famous victories, actually, but there's some important action that you need to take. So stay tuned for that, because we've got AB 495, the outrageous legalized kidnapping bill, still out there as a threat to every family, every parent in California. So we're going to hear about that from them. Jen Horn is here with us today. She's got another couple of these bills that we're going to be talking about, including a Big Brother censorship bill, which is absolutely outrageous. So that's all coming up. But I want to start today with an update on the big fight that's right ahead of us here in California, which of course has massive national implications, which is Proposition 50, which is the illegal, unconstitutional, cheating scheme from Gavin Newsom to steal 5 seats from Republicans, and that will give them an unbelievable imbalance of power on top of what we already have in California. Let me just remind you of the numbers, that right now in California, even in a bad year for Republicans, we get around 40% of the vote. In exchange for that, today, with the rigged maps that we have today, the gerrymandered system that exists today in California, you keep hearing that we have this citizens independent redistricting, blah, 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 that was passed in 2010. Yeah, it's true that it was passed, but it was in name only, because the Democrats hijacked that system. They put their lawyers in, they put all sorts of weird criteria in there to enable them to gerrymander. So as a result of all that, today in California, we have massively gerrymandered maps, 40% of the vote, 17% of the congressional seats. So less than half what we should have if we had fair representation. Put it another way, if we had fair representation in California today, Republicans would have an additional 12 House seats. 12. So when you hear all this stuff about, well, this is just responding to Texas and what Texas did. Remember, Texas redrew their maps to create another 5 Republican House seats. Those extra 5 from Texas doesn't even go halfway towards addressing the gerrymandering that California has already done. So this idea that this is all just in response to Texas is completely ridiculous. It is all about one thing, which is Gavin Newsom running for president, wanting to show that he's the guy who's going to stick it to Trump, and he's going to get another 5 House seats so they can. He said this, it's about ending the Trump presidency. That's Gavin Newsom's phrase, that they can get 5 House seats from California, an additional 5 Democrat seats, to flip the House to impeach Trump, and then he's all set for running for president. That's what this is all about. It's completely outrageous. And in order to do that, he's hustled through his puppet legislature and his puppet courts in California, this illegal, unconstitutional ballot initiative to redraw the maps in between to the census that happens every 10 years. And to pay for it, it's taxpayers, right? At least $250 million, probably closer to $300 million for this special election, as it's called, which nobody asked for, nobody wants, and is basically an illegal and corrupt campaign contribution from taxpayers to Gavin Newsom's presidential campaign. That's what it is. And so I just want to give you an update on what's happening with this, because there's a lot going on and a lot that I've been doing to try and stop this. Let's just talk about what's going on. Number one, as you would expect, all the Democrat, machine is lining up behind this. And almost every day you've got an announcement from this union and that union, the teachers union and the, public sector workers, on and on. Every day, 2 million from this union, 3 million for that, adding to the coffers of the Yes on 50 campaign. So they're all lining up, the Democrat machine. What any of this has got to do with teachers and all these other interests that these unions are supposed to represent beats me. It's all entirely about power and politics, and it's disgusting. And these people, and I'm going to be doing, really exposing them, because they all hide behind the name of the union. These people who are doing this, the union bosses, who are taking their members' money and shoveling it behind this attack on our democracy in California, they are the enemies of democracy, and we're going to make sure everyone knows who they are. Of course, there's a really big one that emerged in the last week in terms of donors to the Newsom cheating scheme to rig the elections. Surprise, George Soros. Of course, George Soros would be in on this one as well. Not enough for him to be supporting violent riots and BLM and all that nonsense. Now he's here trying to rig our elections in California and silence Republican voices, disenfranchise millions of Californians, because here's the way it's going to go. If Prop 50 goes through, then we're going to change from the current situation where you have 40% of the vote, 17% of the House seats, is going to be 40% of the vote for Republicans, 6% of the House seats. Six. It's just unbelievable. And when you turn that into actual votes and you use the numbers from the last presidential election in 2024 here in California, here's a rough estimate that it will take 193,000 votes to elect a Democrat to Congress, 1.52 million to elect a Republican. A Democrat vote will be worth 8 times a Republican vote. So how is any of that fair? Of course it's not. And in fact, it's the basis of the lawsuit that I'm filing. I'm going to give you an update on that in a second. But just going through what's been going on, you've got these ads that they're putting out there. Unbelievable. Have you seen these ads? Total lying, shameless disinformation from Gavin Newsom, from these people that lecture us constantly about disinformation and how they got to control the spread of online disinformation. That's why they got this censorship bill. It's something we're going to be talking about with Jen Horn coming up later. But these ads from Gavin Newsom that you may have seen if you live in California, he literally says that this proposition, Prop 50, protects independent districting. It literally abolishes independent districting. It's shame. It's such a lie. It's a total lie. Their argument is it protects it because they're going to go back to independent redistricting after they've taken the power away from the commission that was voted on, and they've drawn their own maps in secret, politicians drawing the maps. They've seized that power for the next 3 cycles, and it's going to go back to the commission. There's no guarantee of that anywhere. It doesn't say that anywhere in this legislation in terms of making sure that happens. They're just saying, well, that's the intention. So it's a lie. Their ads are totally dishonest. That's why we wrote a legal letter last week to all the TV stations airing this ad and saying, take down this ad. It's lying. It's Gavin Newsom's lying ad must come down. We also wrote to Brendan Carr, the head of the FCC, because these TV stations are regulated by the FCC. I mean, we'll see if he can just get away with this totally brazen lying. I mean, look, I've seen a lot of, I've been around in and around politics and government for many, many years, decades, and I've seen, of course, many examples of politicians trying to present an argument in a way that's most favorable to them and manipulating the facts. That's part of politics. I've never seen such shameless, brazen lying. Protects independent districting when it abolishes it. I mean, it's just unbelievable, the shamelessness of Newsom's lying in this ad. Anyway, there's that. And then the other things I just wanted to mention are the actions that I'm taking, which is number one, I've just mentioned the takedown letter for these ads. We've got to try and stop that. I don't know what luck we'll have in the courts with the lawsuit that I filed, which is the other big fight that I'm engaged in, because I don't want to spend the $250 million on this election that nobody wants. Let's try and say, there's so much, we already paid the highest taxes in California. They refused to fund Prop 36, which was what we passed last year to deal with crime and homelessness. But they refused. They said there's no money for that. Suddenly he's found nearly $300 million that might end up being for this, for his presidential ambitions. So that's why maybe 3 weeks ago now, we filed a lawsuit in federal court based on the equal protection argument, going back to that number of 193,000 votes to elect a Democrat, 1.52 million to elect a Republican, a Democrat vote being worth 8 times a Republican vote. That is in direct contravention of the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution and the California Constitution, which states very clearly that equal protection means one person, one vote, and that every vote should have equal value. And the way that you make sure that every vote has equal value is that you make the electoral districts roughly equal in population. How can they possibly do that if they haven't got a census that's up to date? Millions of people have left California, driven out by high taxes and ridiculous regulations since the last census. Whole neighborhoods have burned to the ground. It's obviously ridiculous. Our legal case is very strong. Gavin Newsom and Shirley Weber, the Secretary of State, ignored the first lawsuit that is filed against them. They have a certain amount of time to respond. Of course, they're playing for time. Didn't respond, hoping that we would go away. Well, we're not going away. And so we're just trying to accelerate the process and get a real legal judgment on this, which is why we're now filing for a preliminary injunction to stop it. And that really brings forward the process of hearing the legal arguments. So that should be happening any day now. I'm not an expert in the court process, but we're really hassling and hustling to make sure that this is heard as soon as possible, because it shouldn't be happening. It's illegal. It's unconstitutional. It's obviously so deeply unfair. It's an attempt to rig our elections, and to say that, oh, because Texas did something, it's okay to disenfranchise millions of Californians is totally unacceptable. I will not accept it. That's why I'm standing up to fight this. If you want to get in the fight, please join us. You can sign the petitions. You can support the legal. I mean, I'm paying for all the legal costs myself from the campaign. So any help with that would be greatly appreciated. Steve Hilton for governor.com. And we'll see what we can do to stop this outrageous attack on our democracy here in California. All right, joining us now for California. We used to call it California Corner. I think that's a little, I don't know why I'm not saying it anymore, Jen.
Because we all live in California.
We all live in California. It's like, exactly. I'm just going to say it's Jen, and that's great. And here you are with updates on the craziness. Well, I mean, you could call it California craziness, but that's like what is it, tautology? I mean, it's just always crazy, and there's just different examples. So let's go. The first one is a very big one. You brought it up. I'm all over it. This week, I've made a statement on it, which is the first time I've done anything like this. I just want to, I'm getting in the mode of being the governor, which I intend to be by the beginning of 2027. And I wrote and published my veto statement for this bill, this outrageous bill, which is the Big Brother Censorship Bill. Tell us about it, and what's your take?
First, I just want to tell you, I think it is so smart that you are you're kind of shadow governing the state of California right now. And the reason I think that is so smart is if you looked at the last presidential election, President Trump would go the places that Biden wouldn't go. For instance, when we had the train derailments, or we had all of those things, and we got to see what leadership would look like under Trump. And we're getting to see that with Steve Hilton. So I appreciate that, because I think we need to see what your actions are going to look like as California governor. So first, I just want to applaud you for that. Second, this bill, you want to talk about crazy town. Gavin Newsom and the Democrats in California love free speech until they don't. If they don't like unfavorable speech is what they like. I don't even want to say that this is a ban on free speech. This is a ban on unfavorable speech. This is a Senate bill created by Henry Stern, who is a Democrat from Los Angeles. I think it's 774, if I'm not mistaken, or 777. I don't know. A lot of sevens. And in this bill, they want to ban people based on what they post on social media. Now, we all know, Steve, that social media can be a cesspool, but that doesn't mean that we want to grant the power to Gavin Newsom's free speech king or whoever he appoints to look over this, to decide what is hateful and what's not. We had examples of how this is played with the American people in the past. I mean, just recently, we've had Google and all of the social media platforms kind of come out and say that they had the thumb put on them by the Biden administration as to what's appropriate.
They've just said it.
Yeah, many conservatives have come out and said they've lost their platforms. I know my co-host on The Morning Answer, Grant Stinchfield, lost his YouTube account, and the money he had it monetized. It was gone because they took away his free speech. It proved to be hugely unpopular with the American people. And I think they woke up to that story when Elon Musk bought Twitter. And I still give Elon Musk a lot of props for helping President Trump win this last election and waking people up, because once he took over at X, people really saw how they were being censored and how their friends and maybe even people they didn't know, but how free speech was being censored on those platforms. So it was grossly unpopular. I believe it's a large part of why Trump got elected. But back in California, they're not hearing that. And Gavin Newsom has tried this before. Last year, Steve, he tried to ban comedy. He thought people weren't smart enough when Kamala Harris was running to figure out what was parody and what wasn't. And so now here we go again with now the state of California doing what the UK is doing, which seems really dangerous. And that is censoring people to the point that they're getting arrested. We had a comedian that just left the United States going back to his home country of Ireland, stops to do a change of planes at Heathrow. He gets arrested. This is dangerous behavior that Gavin Newsom is replicating, and it threatens the people who already are feeling oppressed in his state, which I'm not even going to say are Republicans because that's already a given, but just free-minded independents. It's not right on any level, and I think given True Serum, everybody in California would agree with that if they're being honest.
100%. I mean, and I'm so glad you brought up the UK thing, because there's that terrible story that, I mean, I've been saying it every speech, because since it happened, because it's such as, especially in the context of Charlie, of course, and free speech, and the conversation that has prompted, quite rightly, because he was such a powerful example of that. And this guy gets on a plane and he's arrested at Heathrow in Phoenix, actually, and gets and is arrested at Heathrow Airport. 5 armed police officers. Like I say, you'd be lucky to find 5 armed police officers anywhere in England. They send them to Heathrow Airport to arrest this guy.
A
Um,
comedian.
a
Yeah.
comedian, and then for making jokes online, and then it transpires, people dig into it, that and Tucker had this the other day, that in 2023 over 12,000 people in the UK were arrested for speech crimes. 12,000. And by the way, that's under a Conservative government, shamefully. And so there's a very powerful point that I make, and I can see the reaction when I say, look, one of the things, what am I fighting for? As my campaign for governor, I'm fighting to make sure that this state that I love does not turn into the country I left.
That's right.
And that's what's happening with this bill.
I would just add in, I think what's really also kind of dangerous here is the person who decides. There are a lot of ideas that sound good to people, but then you have to figure out who the arbiter is going to be. So my question for Gavin Newsom and California Democrats is, what are they going to do about Antifa organizing protests online? What about the people who are saying make assassinations great again against the Charlie Kirk or the Turning Point USA folks? I mean, are we going to go after those people, or is it going to be conservatives cracking jokes about Joe Biden's state of mind, his frailty, or maybe Gavin Newsom's hair gel that are going to be taken off?
Or anything that where you questioned, I mean, this was all in COVID, where you questioned the vaccine mandates, whatever. I mean, it's just, I mean, I had it when I had that. In fact, it was that example. It was the most brilliant example, because it showed how total BS the whole thing was, which was when the vaccines came out and I was, against the vaccine mandates, and I had Jay Bhattacharya on my show, on this show, this podcast, to talk about the vaccine mandates, which he was dead against, and he was for science, absolutely clear science-based reasons, which is that the COVID vaccine, never was intended to prevent transmission. That was never, they didn't even ask for that in the emergency use authorization. It's purely, as Jay put it, a private benefit, a personal. If you believe you want it, that's fine. Knock yourself out, have the vaccine, but it's not, doesn't make any difference to anyone else, because it doesn't stop transmission. So there's no justification at all for vaccine mandates. Anyway, he came on, made that argument. That episode of the show was taken down by YouTube.
Wow.
And then we got this message saying, because it breaks our community health guidelines or whatever. So then this amazing thing happened. So it's towards the end of the week, and I still was doing my Fox shows before I became a candidate. I had my Sunday night show, The Next Revolution, and so I thought, this is a brilliant story. I'm going to go for it. And so I said, I'm going to lead on it, right? We booked Jay to come on the Sunday show, and we made the story both about the vaccine mandates and the censorship by YouTube. And then 2 things happened in parallel. My Steve Hilton Show team from the podcast reached out to the YouTube, through the normal process that any other person would go through. We didn't have any special access. We just complained and said, we think this is unfair. What are you going to do? And then at the same time, because we were doing it on Fox News, my team in New York for Fox reached out to YouTube corporate for, like, did they want to put anyone up to defend it, comment. Almost within the same hour, I think it was a Saturday night before the Sunday show, we got a response from the YouTube sort of normal process that everyone goes through, which said, we have carefully reviewed your content and can confirm that it breaks our community guidelines, and therefore won't be going back up. And then, like, I don't know, about an hour later, a team in New York get a message from YouTube corporate, or Google corporate, because they own YouTube, We're so sorry that this was taken down. This was taken down in error and is a terrible mistake, and we really apologize. And just think, oh my God, it's such BS. Like they don't. It's just because there's an issue and there's a PR problem, then they just
Yeah.
and there's no and of course now we know, and it literally was last week. The Google at in Congress said that all of that was at the behest of the Biden administration, and this is what's coming back in California if this bill passes. Well, sorry, it has passed. It's passed the legislature, so there's only one last thing, which is Newsom has to veto, which is why I'm doing something on it, and I urge everyone to go to my social media at Steve Hilton X, and there's a link to a petition which we can get to Gavin Newsom to tell him to veto the Big Brother bill, which is outrageous.
He should, and I'm glad that you're calling it that because it is the Big Brother bill. And do you need Gavin Newsom or anybody that he appoints, his cronies, telling you what's appropriate? Because I can guarantee you what Gavin Newsom thinks is appropriate speech is probably not the same that we do, especially as you hear, you just brought up COVID. And one of the other little stories that's been bubbling around and not getting that much attention is that they're taking the steps with their own health department in California now to do soft mandates on vaccines again. So you have to think, what if I just want to speak out about that? Or what if I want to speak out about the Tylenol issue that President Trump brought up for pregnant women? What if I want to speak out just about anything like that? Am I going to be taken down in California because they hate speech that is outside of the lines of what they approve?
And again, their mechanism is to put pressure on the social media companies.
That's right.
That's the mechanism in this bill.
Yep.
Massive fines if they don't do it, which of course it will totally. It's so insidious because of the companies will just kind of over enforce because they want to avoid any kind of trouble.
That's right.
It's outrageous. All right, next one. Like I hadn't heard of this. You said Carl DeMaio's been, highlighting this license
Yes.
plate recognition. What's this about?
This is so crazy. So I mean, I don't have to tell you, we have a crime problem. It's all over the state of California. Some places are getting a little bit better. I would point to San Francisco where they're starting to take crime a little more seriously. Where I live in Los Angeles, not so much. There's a lot of pressure on the police chief, on the sheriff to only enforce certain laws. Judges are going soft on criminals. It's a mess. And people, I would say, feel less safe today than they have maybe 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago. So, and for some reason, I think COVID once again was a shifting point for us. So instead of making it, I don't know, maybe even just staying out of it, the state legislature says, you know what, let's even make it harder for law enforcement to operate in California. And so this new Senate bill is part of a package of laws that are going to make things a lot better for criminals in California, also on Gavin Newsom's desk. This one is Senate Bill 274. Our friend Carl DeMaio talked about it on the floor last week. And this bill essentially would require that any law enforcement agency operating in the state of California, so this would be city, county, so local, state, or even I think they're trying once again to do overreach into the federal agents as well, that you cannot bank license plate recognition software. Now, here's the problem. Surveillance is how police now can do law enforcement and be everywhere that they can't be because they are also short, like so understaffed. I mean, they're so short on manpower. This is part of the problem that we saw with the fires and the evacuations. There are just not enough people. People complain. Deputies and police officers complain about the fact that they're spending so much on overtime. Well, it's because they're so understaffed. So they're understaffed. If they're trying to solve a crime, they might use surveillance cameras. And look, I don't love a surveillance state, but the point is everybody has Ring doorbells. Every stoplight now has cameras. If there's someone on the loose, let's use that information to try to make an arrest. They don't want to use the license plate reader technology anymore. They don't want to bank that. Now,
What does bank that mean?
it means hold on to it, like keep that footage for 60 days. They can keep it. They want to dump it. And so here's the problem with this law. And I think you'll agree with me. Surveillance cameras, as I just said, solve a lot of crimes. Getting people's license plate, they're able to track the movement of criminals. They use that to find Brian Koberger in the Idaho killings of those college girls. They use surveillance in the case of Charlie Kirk, our friend who was assassinated. By trying to remove this tool from law enforcement, you are really not only just tying their hands and putting them in dangerous situations, but now you're preventing them from getting dangerous people off the street. And I feel like this again is something that they do in California to help the criminals and do not care about the victims or about taxpayers who are just trying to have feel safe in their neighborhoods and sending their kids to school. And here we are making it more difficult at the state legislature level.
And what is the justification? I mean, usually with this, and usually any kind
Privacy.
of privacy. Yeah, but
Which you don't
suddenly
get
they care about.
online if you're a conservative, apparently, with this with the freedom of speech bill, the Big Brother bill, but you need it if you're a criminal trying to evade police.
So they suddenly care about privacy. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. It's oxymoronic, is what
It
it
must be
is.
something to do. There's usually anything like this. There's usually some kind of ideological, racial justice, thing going on. I mean, that's how they think.
Hmm.
Most of the things that, when you look at the sort of crazy things that end up being pro-criminal, it usually starts from something like that. I don't know what this,
That they're
the
probably saying it impacts people of color more often.
disproportionate blood. I mean, it's just these people. Well, as another point, I mean, not just the specifics of this bill, it illustrates a broader point I make the whole time, which is there are so many bills that they pass, which itself, just the number, the volume of the legislation itself is a problem. Like this is we're talking about a lot of bills in the show today and in this period because this is the time of year when the bills get signed. So
Yes.
the session finished September 18th, and now there's a month or so for Gavin Newsom to sign them or veto them. Or and there's a whole new thing I learned about today, in a conversation on this show today, which is that there's a way of him sneakily letting it happen without actually signing it, which I wasn't aware of. He can just not sign it and not
Really?
veto it, and it
So
still
if he
becomes
doesn't
law.
do anything, it goes into
Yes, but he
wow.
doesn't kind of own it. He doesn't put his name to it. So there's another, the sort of weasel option, as it were.
The weasel option.
Um,
I'm pretty sure, knowing Gavin Newsom, he's probably weaseled on a few of those laws.
exactly. Anyway, but the point is, like, I don't know the exact number. Well, I'm going to be doing an event on this towards the end of the period because I want to make the point about how much of this there is, because this is what adds to all the nonsense and nightmare in California when businesses say, "Well, I can't believe this new regulation or this new ridiculous thing I have to comply with," or we in our daily lives come across something. It's because of all these bills. And
Yeah.
the amazing thing is that this year even the Democrats, the leaders of the Democrats in the state Senate and the state assembly at the beginning of the year said, we're passing too many bills. We're going to put a limit. We're going to on the number of bills that each person can introduce to try and reduce the number. Even with the limit, the number, we can't get an exact number yet, but it's around 800
Which
this
is
year.
why they've never read them when they pass them.
800? What are you
Yeah.
talking about? That's insane. New ones this year. I mean, last year it was about 1,000. And you just think, exactly as you say, no one's read them. It
No.
just goes through. It's all the kind of corrupt special interests and insiders in Sacramento writing it. Probably the legislators haven't read them. And
That's what I think. It's a gang mentality. And so someone who introduces it and explains it says, well, this is for criminal justice reform. This is for racial justice. This is for, they'll present it that way. And then the people will just vote in unison because that's what they do without actually reading or
then, a couple of them, this is the point I always make, that some of them pop up because an alert person who's on it kind of sees this one, and you may have, really powerful advocates. For example, we got Denise Aguilar and Tara Thornton on the parents' rights bills on the show today talking about this, and they're very powerful at elevating things like AB 495 that are lurking. And so some of these things get attention, but there's hundreds that don't. And they could be just as bad. Who knows what's inside of these bills? Because just no time to pay attention to all of them.
That's the point. And think about this. And here's like a little bit of, I guess, a silver lining is when we do pay attention and when we do act, we have a pretty good record of stopping some of these really atrocious bills. But the problem is, how do we get the good people, the parents, the families, the taxpayers of California who want a little bit more from the state than they're getting? How do we get that information out there? And, the news media is not curious when it comes to these stories. It's not sexy. It's not salacious. They're going to talk about the robbery at the 7-Eleven, or they're going to talk about the rap star. I mean, they're going to do all of that. They're not going to talk about license plate readers. But when you think about the ramifications of that, when you're solving crimes, you might care. And so these are the things that we have to try to figure out how to do. And this is why I always implore people, and I know you do too, and especially after Charlie Kirk's passing, we need to be bold. We need to be strong. We need to be courageous. And we need to have conversations in our community when we learn about these things and start spreading the news. Because if we don't do it, if we don't take the chance to do our own word of mouth and our own spreading of these stories on social media, the news media is not going to do it for us.
Exactly right. All right. Last one today.
Yes.
This is amazing. There's this sort of common sense coming over someone we thought was a crazy leftist in LA. What's going on?
I almost fell over in my chair because typically I look around my home city of LA, born and raised, as I mentioned, and think pretty much everybody in elected office has one brain cell that they're just trying to get a spark out of every once in a while. But this guy, Ken Mejia, he is the controller in Los Angeles. And I did not have high hopes for him, Steve. He was endorsed by none other than Bernie Sanders. But I was wrong, maybe. At least it seems like there's some common sense coming from the guy who actually looks at our finances in LA and goes, So what's at stake here is an expansion to the LA Convention Center. The LA Convention Center in downtown LA, it's right next to Staples or Crypto, that arena, the LA Live area. They want to expand it. And it's going to cost a lot of money to do that the city council does not have. But the city council, of course, voted anyway to get an expansion. And Mayor Bass just signed this because she wants to have this as one of her legacy projects. Because knowing Karen Bass, there's not going to be a lot that she's going to be able to hang her hat on. So she needs a legacy. And so they did this, of course, all in the name to get the convention center ready for the Olympics because they want to have the very important event of judo inside the convention center. And so they need to have an expansion because apparently there are a lot of judo fans out there, more than I would have ever known. So Ken Mejia comes out and he says, well, wait a second, we don't have the money for this. And so they're trying to prove that they're going to be able to earn the money back. Well, he actually thinks that the budget is going to be it's supposed to be over $200 million for this project. That's what the LA City Council says. He says it's going to be closer to $500 million. And he says they're never going to be able to pay it back. It will never justify the amount of money that it costs, especially when you build in the interest that they're going to rack up. But here's the beauty, because we are so used to California politicians spending more money than they have, Steve, but this is the beautiful part. They want to have this ready for the Olympics in 2028 for judo and some of the other events. This project is not even set to be done until 2029, which in California speak to me means you're lucky if we're going to see it by 2035. You're trying to tell me that the city council is expecting and banking on the contractors that are going to be sucking the money out of this project to get it done a year early? I just don't think that's possible.
It's amazing. It's so funny. I mean, it is just funny. They haven't built, and exactly as you say, high-speed rail. What are we to, and the other thing that's outrageous about this is that they said very specifically when they bid for the Olympics in LA that they would not need to build any new venues.
Right.
That was part of the bid. They said, we've got all the facilities we need. This is going to be, and then no taxpayer money. That was the other thing.
Yeah.
They said all this stuff, and now they're turning around and saying, oh, by the way, for judo, I mean, honestly.
I don't know. All I can think of truly is because, of course, they're going to say we have everything we need. Because guess what? We do. We have everything we need. We have the Rose Bowl. We have all of the arenas all over that are brand new. We've got all of the stuff in downtown Los Angeles. You've got all kinds of things that are going to be used. I mean, when we say that the Olympics are going to be in LA, it's going to be a long, big, drawn out area. I mean, I've talked to members of the CHP who are planning security on this. It's going to be tens of miles that are going to separate these events, right? But I think truly that this is Karen Bass I do believe this is a legacy project for her. And so she says, why not use the excuse of the Olympics to try to get this done when she knows there is no way that this is ever going to work?
What kind of legacy project is that? I mean, who cares anyway?
I bet you she names it after herself.
God. How about cleaning up homelessness? That'd be a good legacy.
Wouldn't
How
that
about
be
rebuilding
the
Palisades and Alta D? How about, something that actually people will appreciate? It's just.
But see, that's hard. Those are hard projects. She likes the easy stuff. She likes the stuff that she can get other people to do.
Well, actually, I noticed this weekend. I put it out on social media. So she puts out a post going on about how this is Karen Bass. This is Friday. 10 city landmarks shine tonight in a mosaic of colors for the 4th anniversary of LA for All, the award-winning campaign to prevent hate crimes and uplift every community. Los Angeles will always stand united and strong against hate. And it's just a bunch of pictures with nice, pretty lights, which is great. I love lights.
I do too.
What are you talking about? That's what she's landmark. So that, as you say, well, we can put some lights on 10 buildings.
That
That's
works. Christmas lights, exactly, but we'll call them anti-hate lights. I wish they would take those anti-hate lights to the legislature because those people work like they hate us. Maybe we need to have the campaign extend to Sacramento.
exactly. And then I put she can't do anything about homelessness. She can't do anything about crime. She can't rebuild the Palisades. But whatever, pink lights.
Pink lights.
Pink lights. These Democrats are a joke. Kick them out in 2026. Yes, that's what we need
I
to do.
love it. I'm with you. I know they can't, they're just putting Christmas lights on the filth that they still leave behind. Oh,
Yes, it's a new version of the thing. Was it lipstick on a pig?
that's right.
So now we have pink lights on. What did you say? It was just very good.
On the homelessness. I mean,
Yeah,
on the filth, on the
on the
filth. There
filth. That's it.
you
Pink lights on the filth. Very good.
go.
All right. Well, I suppose it's something.
Yes,
Jen, good to see you again. See you soon.
it is something. Thanks, Steve.
So joining us now, a fantastic duo who've been fighting so hard for so long for parents' rights. You know them very well, Tara Thornton, Denise Aguilar. Fantastic to see you both. You are such a powerhouse team. Honestly, if our legislators were like you, I think we'd be in a much better position in California. You've been fighting so hard. We've talked over the months about the bills that, in particular, in the area of parents' rights, where you've been such incredible champions. And so we're just going to go over three with you. We're in the middle of the period where Gavin Newsom is signing the bills that have been passed, and there's still a chance to stop one really bad one, but which he hasn't signed yet, but that has been passed. I think people can guess which one that is. But let's go through in order. I want to start with the good news, the victory of AB 84. Just remind us about that and why it was so important. Tara, why don't you start?
Oh, yeah. AB 84 is a historic defeat. Never before have we stopped an attack by the California Teachers Association, and on top of it, in the Senate. It really stopped in both houses because this became the bill of the year to fight in California at the Capitol. The leadership and the CTA did everything they could to, under the guise of oversight of the charter, homeschool, and small vendor ecosystem, to pass AB 84. But what it really was is an attack to undermine and get rid of their competition.
So homeschooling was the main target of that, was it?
Yeah, it was actually everything charter and homeschooling.
Amazing. But we beat it. I mean, you beat it. I mean, you really mobilized people. I got involved in my own small way and urged my followers and supporters to get involved. But it's a really, really exciting example of how people power, when it's really organized and focused, can make a difference. It's fantastic. Denise, I mean, it was just, did you think at the beginning that you would beat that one?
We kind of did already. We knew that the power of homeschool families and just families in California is incredible when organized properly. And that's something that Tara and I do is we're very effective in grassroots organizing. And when you start trying to attack our children's educational choices, and even for children who are foster care kids, incarcerated youth, the parents and the families really came out. And that's what we could do. We've had historical defeats before, like SB 866 and AB 659. So we knew that as long as we lock arms together and that we have our district actions to along with our state actions, state level actions, it could be an incredible, incredible movement of families. And I'm just really proud of the people who stepped up on this.
It was amazing. So, I mean, just it's great. I mean, even in this one party rule that we have, obviously I'm hoping to change that and planning to change that next year when I'm elected governor. But right now it's one party rule. They've had it all their own way for 15 years, solid. And it's, they think they own this state and they think they own us, but they don't. And you showed that. It was absolutely thrilling. Let's move to one now, which is the one I mentioned at the top, where there's still a chance to stop something absolutely terrible. This is, we've talked about it a lot. You've been right out there on it, and as have I. Pastor Jack Hibbs, especially my friend who's supporting my campaign, has been very, very strong on this. AB 495, where does that stand?
It's sitting on the governor's desk. It passed along party lines in the Assembly and the Senate. And now Gavin Newsom has until October 12th, and he has three choices. He can sign it, he can veto it. Veto is the only way to stop it in the executive branch, or he can let it just go past the 12th without his signature. It's like a soft way. It's like trying to not own it, but he actually is responsible for it.
So what happens? That's an interesting one, the soft thing. What does that mean? Does that mean it's not the law, but what
No, no,
happens?
it's the law. It'll go into law. It just means that he doesn't want to make a signing statement and boldly claim it because it's such a losing position. I mean, the
Wow.
people are so firm against it. But if he doesn't do anything, it just slides across his desk and goes straight into law.
Wow. That's a whole thing I didn't know about. I thought it was two choices. That's so sneaky.
It is politics is sneaky. There are no rules in politics, and a lot of people had so much misconceptions about this bill that it only impacted or children who are of immigrant families. This bill impacts every single child in the state of California. The misleading comments by the author, Assemblymember Rodriguez, was just so honestly diabolical that they introduced this kind of bill to make it seem like the bleeding hearts of protect these children when really it is a creating another loophole to put all kids in California in danger again.
So let's just get into it because for those who may not have seen previous conversations on this or followed what's going on, let's just get. I mean, the phrase that has been used, and Jack Hibbs and others I've used it, is legalized kidnapping for AB 495. It's a really outrageous. I mean, there aren't strong enough words to describe how outrageous this is. But talk us through what's in it.
Yeah, it's basically the caregiver's authorization affidavit. And what that form does is it allows an adult to take custody of someone else's minor child. It's not actual custody, it's not legal custody, but it's a guardianship like relationship that functions like custody. They're able to move the child in and out of schools, enroll them and de-enroll them. They're allowed to make medical decisions for decisions that can happen on campuses, school campuses, and the child will ostensibly be living with them. And so why it's being called a kidnapping or traffickers bill is it's a tool to make it easier for predators to get access to and have control of your child's life. It was such a bad bill. So the big problems with it, there is no parental signature on this form. There is no vetting of the caregivers, like no ID, no fingerprinting. And then there is no oversight. There's no follow up to make sure that the child is safe and continually safe with that caregiver. And beyond that, they expanded who's able to use the caregiver's authorization affidavit to include fifth degree relatives, which you might as well just basically say everyone except a small handful. Now, the blowback from the grassroots, the spotlighting on social media, the showing up at the Capitol, the phone calls, they forced them to amend out one of the really bad pieces. So at least one piece is out, and that's the part that extended the ability to use the form to a non-relative family member or someone with a mentor-like relationship with the child.
Right, but it's still.
Oh, it's
Uh,
horrific.
Oh,
yeah.
it's an awful bill still. It's still like your cousins, uncles. People always are aligning this with like family only, but this extends to like your uncle's sister's cousin's brother. Like this is not a relative family. There's 5 degrees of separation. It's a very dangerous bill, and it tells you a lot when legislators pass this so quietly and so quickly through both houses. There was no real dialogue with constituents, and the people who did, we voiced our opinions. We were called names by the legislators. We were called, racist and all these things. When really, we just want to close loopholes that put children in danger. We should be protecting all kids, not allowing for this kind of policy to push forward.
And just to remember, the prompt for it was because they are so kind of. It's part of the Trump derangement syndrome, really, and the open borders ideology and all of that, because it's prompted by the scenario that this bill was developed in response to is what this is when, let's say, that you have the parents of a child are deported. That's what this is. On its face, that's what this is about, right? Correct?
Yes.
Yeah, it's really disingenuous. It's political theater and master gaslighting. And just like Denise said, when they pass the bill, the final vote, they spend half an hour, all these legislators gaslighting about how we got to protect these kids and everyone opposing this is evil. And when the truth of the matter, and they know this because we had hearings and they got informed consent, that our concerns were that there is no parental signature, there is no vetting of the caregiver, there is no oversight of the caregiver, and there is an extension to adults that have no closeness or way to check and keep track of them for the caregiver. So all in all, there's actually nothing more infuriating than being at the Capitol and working on a bill and doing a hearing and saying your Me Too's or being at the floor sessions and being gaslit when they're up there saying, "Isn't this great? This bill's going to allow parents to, pick who their caregiver is," when that's the absolute opposite of the truth and the only part we're concerned with. And it affects all kids. And people need to know this isn't tied just to school. Yes, it gives them the ability to enroll and de-enroll and to make medical decisions, but this caregiver's authorization affidavit gives a lot of legitimacy to a potential predator. And that means if your kid's in private, public, or homeschool.
So how would it work for a parent sort of watching or listening would be saying, well, how could my child possibly be at risk through this bill?
There are so many different ways. I mean, if you look at the policy that's been passed before in California, like bills like AB 665, that allows for 12-year-olds to decide if they want to run away from home and go into a residential shelter under the care of the state. I mean, 12-year-olds are basically emancipated. They have medical privacy, they can make medical decisions for themselves. And all it takes is for one person to see an opportunity and to go in there, swipe that kid. And like Tara said, it's not tied to schools. If you have a fifth person removed from your family can come, build that relationship with your kid and say, "Hey, I know you don't feel supported at home. Maybe you don't like the rules of your house. Maybe you don't, you want to explore different types of, transitions, medical, social, whatever it is." They have the ability to make those medical decisions for those kids, and those kids have the ability to make those decisions without parental consent, knowledge, or notification. It's really important to know what's been passed previously so that way you can connect the dots on what we're
Right.
dealing with right now.
Incredibly helpful. So basically, the law currently is that over 12 years and above, you can run away from home, and the state and gives you the right to live away from your parents in a state shelter. That's currently the
Yes,
law. Right.
that is currently the law.
Now, what this would do is on top of that, you can basically, um, as it were, divorce your parents. You can just say, someone could grab hold of you. And by the way, we've got 495 passed now. I can become your legal guardian.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a tool for predators and groomers, and we should be taking tools away from them instead of giving them ways to make it easier to get at our children with their ill intent.
When this bill was being passed, there was a lot of misconception that courts would be involved, that, oh, the courts are going to be able to decide if this parent or this person will be able to be the guardian. There are no courts. There's no background checks. There's no fingerprints. This isn't like the foster care system where you have checks and balances, even though, CPS could be reformed. We still want some kind of agency to oversee these children to make sure that they're safe and they're protected. There is no oversight. This is used like a permission slip where these people can use this piece of paper and wave it around at a doctor's office or wave it around at a school and then make these kinds of decisions. Now they're what is considered to be a legal guardian.
If Gavin Newsom signs this, he's going to be no better than Joe Biden, who opened the borders and sent 300,000 plus kids across with absolutely no oversight. That's what this literally enables and gives an even stronger tool for these predators to just take guardianship of kids, and we can lose them and we have no way to make sure that they are being protected. Even if they're in plain sight in a school, there is no path. There's even pieces in this law that doesn't allow you to notify CPS. So there's a lot of shielding here too, that the kid could be in plain sight and you have no ability as a caring adult to make sure that they're safe by the person who has the caregiver's authorization affidavit.
It's so extreme. And it's part of their ideology,
Yeah.
which is why this is part of the whole, it's such a central argument in the parents' rights movement, because their ideology is they're not your kids. They're the state, the government, in the end. They really believe that, and they disapprove of parents basically, and they disapprove and they don't trust parents to make the right decisions. And it's just, I mean, there's a long intellectual tradition to this. This goes right back to Marxism and the idea that the family unit is a kind of barrier to the state taking over and assuming full responsibilities, and that's what this is. It's outrageous. All right, so what should people actually do? We've got 2 weeks to stop it. What can people do right now?
It is important to share your concerns with Gavin Newsom on social media. A lot of people don't have X, which is a huge mistake because all of the legislators, including Gavin Newsom, are on that social media platform. Right now, the only thing that we have is for Gavin Newsom to veto the bill. So for families, get on social media, tag Gavin Newsom, ask him to veto the bill, share it with your friends. I mean, we saw the kind of push that Pastor Jack Hibbs did. We need to have that on a consistent basis. Gavin needs to feel the pressure from the community and that he is going to be known as a person who's going to allow for the trafficking of children in California.
That is, we got to be aggressive about it. And we got 2 weeks. Okay, last one. This is one that has been signed, but it's a very important one, and there's some real clarification needed about what it means. AB 144. Who's going to take this?
Yeah, I think we both will,
Yeah.
because there's a lot to say about this. This is Newsom's big move against RFK Jr. and with HHS reforming and trying to get the corporate interests out of the CDC and ACIP. And he made a big public, political theater show around, I'm gonna not follow the federal CDC and ACIP. I'm going to make my own West Coast alliance. And this is the legislative move to change statute to make all of the public health code refer to the California Department of Public Health and not the federal CDC and ACIP. Now, I'm just going to say this is a losing position. The people of California and the people of this country want to see the chronic disease epidemic in our children and all adults ended. They want to see corporate interest and the captive industries dismantled. And so Newsom is going against the popular opinion here. And there's now, so the AB 144 was him taking care of statute to make everything, centralize the power around California Department of Public Health. That's the CDPH. And there's a little misinformation that we want to clear up. It did address HPV in the bill, but what that was going over the language of the letter that gets sent out to all sixth grade families. This letter is very misleading, and it advises, that's the word, it advises you to follow the recommended schedule on HPV to advance in school. There is no law in California requiring the HPV shot. People thought that's what it meant. It does not. 2 years ago, we defeated that part of the bill, AB 659, so that there is no mandate for K through 12 or college in California for HPV. Now, the other big concern about this bill, and you could see that they were changing statute language around the flu shots with elders in hospitals and nursing homes. They were changing it around different programs to fund low-income public health programs. That was just referring it all back to centralizing power around CDPH and not the federal CDC and ACIP. But the big thing that this signals, this is a power move. California Department of Public Health was given the power in 2015 through SB 277. That's the law that removed personal belief exemptions. At the same time, it gave CDPH the power to put shots directly on the childhood schedule. That means they bypassed the stakeholder process of going through the legislature. Now, no shots have been added that way ever since 2015 or ever. So right now, but they have that power, and this signals a move that they're going to use it. And the thing that people need to know is that in 2015 with SB 277, we got an amendment that added a personal belief exemption in California to any shots that are added to the mandated childhood shot schedule for school through the California Department of Public Health. Now, that's at the behest of the governor, by the way, that a shot would be added. So if CDPH puts any shots on, you can thank the governor, Newsom, for that. And he has signaled he would do COVID shots that way. So people need to know there is currently a personal belief exemption if a shot goes on to the mandated schedule through Newsom's CDPH. We also need to prepare to fight a legislative battle next year. We cannot let them try to remove that personal belief exemption to CDPH mandated shots.
Interesting. So you still have that exemption. So they took it away from everything that was there or at the time, but any new ones added by California Department of Public Health, the personal exemption still stands today.
Basically, if anything's added through the legislature, there's still no personal belief exemption. The only way we got the personal belief exemption attached was if they do a bureaucratic mandate through the CDPH. So if a shot is added through the CDPH, there is still, under SB 277 2015 law, a personal belief exemption. Richard Pan tried to remove that in 2022 when he tried to mandate the COVID shot for kids for school. And the second part of that bill was to remove that personal belief exemption.
It's so outrageous, these people. I mean, so Denise, what do we think? I mean, so this what so this how's it gonna make what's the practical effect of 144?
No practical effect. One of the other things in the bill is that it brings out. It's really important to know is that right now we have the 1986 Act, which protects the pharmaceutical companies from any lawsuits. They have a complete shield of liability. Gavin Newsom in AB 144 brings that shield to a state level. So he wants to protect the pharmaceutical companies, corporations, and billionaires against any lawsuits and try to implement and make families believe that they are going to be forced to comply with things like the COVID shot and the HPV shot. So, the most important thing that families need to walk away from here knowing is that you should be ready to be activated next legislative session. Because he knows that there is a personal belief exemption, we can expect one of two things. Either they're going to try to remove that PBE from parents, or they're going to try to push something through legislature. And we've already spoken when we defeated AB 659, the HPV bill. We were told directly by the author's office that they're going to try again. And so that's why it's really important for families to walk away from this podcast to know you are going to be called should this happen. You have to be prepared. The best thing you can do right now is to get to know your legislators. We all know politics is very confusing, can be very intimidating, but there's nothing more intimidating than having to comply with an HPV shot that's currently on trial with no exemptions and no exceptions. So, right now, what Tara and I are doing is we will be going across California to talk to families in a town hall setting on what this means, how you can be activated, and how you can start engaging at a local level.
Yeah, I want to add on the immunity shield. AB 144 did something brand new. And this is really big, and the lawyers will understand this. They extended the immunity shield for vaccine manufacturers to an entirely new category, to private nonprofits. And that includes schools, churches, and community centers. And it shields them and their members from liability for promoting or hosting vaccine clinics. That means essentially for being responsible for administering shots. So think about during the lockdowns and when the COVID shots came out, and you heard about the schools and the nurses who were coercing and children who got vaccinated against their parents' consent. Right now, there's a lot of lawsuits around that. But if you give them immunity shield, this is a new form of immunity shield that's going to take out and protect all this essentially criminal malfeasance against these children and families. So this is a really big move that they took to extend liability protections out into the community at a place where we didn't have them before, the private nonprofits, schools, churches, and community centers.
Amazing. I mean, they're just relentless. I mean, they really are. They are absolutely determined to just take power away from parents any way they can on anything. I mean, it's just incredible. We really, I mean, just to sort of wrap up on this particular issue, it just reminds me that I'm working on it right now. We've got to have a real medical freedom manifesto for California because so much of this to me is and I want to do this because it's got to be, the way that I can overturn laws as governor is if it's unconstitutional against the California Constitution. There's so much of this that must be because it's just such an aggressive assault on parents' rights. I mean, we got to stop all this and overturn it, which I will do my best to do. Right. Last point, though, what you just touched on, Denise, which is the next moves. And you're relentless like they are. That's why you're so brilliant. And you're going to be starting town halls. I think you said October the 15th. Tell everyone about that and how they can get involved with everything you're doing going forward.
Sure. So we are launching our Grassroots California Action and Freedom Angels University. They do two different things. So Grassroots California Action focuses on elections, things like Prop 50, no on Prop 50, getting people activated, supporting candidates at a local level, learning how to knock on doors of Democrats. Freedom Angels University teaches people how to be effective in civics, how to get activated at a local level. Tara and I have something called our district to capital networks, where we have our groups in the districts. Tara and I are in the capital. So that way, when there's a bill that we're either supporting or opposing, we can say, hey, we have people in your community right now that support or oppose this. We need to have conversations around this. What Freedom Angels University is going to do is it's going to teach you how to use your time as best as you can to be as effective as you can to support legislation that protects families, children, and freedom. We start October 15th. We're going to be working our way from Southern California all the way up to Northern California. One of the things that we say is if you're interested in having us come to your location, contact us at freedomangelsden@gmail.com. And if you have a location, we're going to be there. We know the power of the people when we are organized and mobilized and when we have effective strategy. So that's what we're going to be launching. We do it every single year after legislative session because there's a lot of sometimes confusion, misinformation when it comes to laws that are being passed. And so this is an opportunity to connect with people in the community, teach them how to be effective at building relationships with legislators, and how to join our district to capital networks.
Amazing. I love it. It's just fantastic. This is what it's all about. This is America. This is like what I always say, which is you're never going to be in the end. You're not going to keep America down because you're not going to keep Americans down, and we're going to fight tyranny, and we're not going to let them get away with it. And you are absolutely such strong proof of that. I love it. So, just last question: where can people follow you in terms of you're so strong on social media? Just tell us all that information.
Sure. So I am on Instagram and X. Instagram is Denise hyphen the Informed Mama. X is the Informed Mama 209. We're also Freedom Angels 2 at G or Freedom Angels 2 on X. That is where we share all of our calendar, our information of where you can find us and what you can do for calls to action. We're also at freedom-angels.org.
And I think I'm at Tara_Freedom Angel on IG. We get taken down so often. I think that's what it is. And then on X, I'm Pioneer Mama. And then we have Freedom Angels 2 on X. I also want to add, people ask us constantly what they can do to help. And yes, you can make the calls and spotlight on social media. It's critical and build the relationships. But we got to change the train. We got to break the supermajority in
Yes, yes,
California.
yes.
We've got to stop Prop 50 this November. We've got to do it next year. So those are really the biggest pieces, and everything's connected, and nobody needs anything more than they already have in them right now to step in, lock arms, and create the world that we want for our children.
I love it.
We're going to
Exactly.
take California back.
We are. I love it. You're the best. Thank you so much. I'll see you out there. Thanks so much for being
All
with
right.
us today.
Thanks, Steve.
That's our show for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you follow us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. And check out Steve Hilton for governor.com. Get involved with the campaign. We are building our volunteer army. We'd love to have you on board. See you next week.